Hey guys, MC Stu here, and today we're going to jump up to the next level from beginner to advanced, and we're going to start talking a little more specific about some of the builds that I have put together, and maybe a little bit more in the way of advanced concepts in terms of how these ships work. I've given a lot of thought to the different tiers as it goes, or as it relates to, beginner, new, and all those different things. So I think for me, I'm going to look at it in 4 different tiers. New to the game, you just started, you don't have a 65 level character yet. You're still figuring out the UI and all the different systems in the game, and that is going to be, what I consider a new player. And until you get to a level 65 and have some of those systems figured out and started to grind through them, you're not really in a position to start building for, performance and progressing even higher. So that's not to knock those people. We all started there, and there'll be videos coming from myself, and there's also quite a few other ones in, throughout the community that has videos for you to help you get through, the really, really basic stuff so you can get to the level 65 and then start taking on some of these higher level builds. Next would be what I consider beginner, which was what most of the last series that I've been working on was really aimed at people that have a basic understanding of the game, have some of these systems unlocked or completed or close to, and understand really kind of the basic mechanics, and going over, and what I did is go over those, kind of basic concepts of how to use those things. And I will be continuing to add to that, so that series is not done. But I am going to go ahead and expand into the next level, which is the advanced level, which is somebody that has, basically, that basic methodology down. They understand how the game works. Now they're just trying to figure out how to put things together and what things work together well. And I'll be going over some of that stuff with really examples of how I'm doing it with the ships and the resources that I have. I realize that, not everyone's going to have the same stuff. And I have what I have. I'm going to base it off of that. With the event that will be completing at the end of the year, most of what I'm going to show you guys, at least on my free-to-play account, all of that stuff will be obtainable to you if you don't buy anything, from that event that's coming up, with the rewards they're giving out, depending on what you decide to pick. Also, at the advanced level, it's pretty hard to get there without, taking advantage of those events, grinding out, dill to switch over to Zen without spending some money. And, really I'd be referring back to the video that I did last for my 4 top C-store ships. In order to progress, into the advanced level and beyond it, you really need to have some of those premium traits. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to spend money. I haven't spent any money on this account, but I have been playing it for about 1.5 years, and it's slowly progressing up to a good point. But I've been taking advantage of the free coupon events and things like that in order to get some of that premium stuff unlocked. The last level is going to be your elite level, which is really, your Augies, your Sarcasms, Yowalski, if he ever comes back. Hopefully he does. And others, they really have a lock on that and really understand that level of the game, far beyond what I do. And so, if you're at that level, I would certainly, refer you over to those guys to take a look at some of the really high-end stuff. So what we're going to go over today is going to be in the advanced level. This is a beam overload build, Disruptor build, and let's go ahead and jump right into it and take a look. If you haven't already, I would appreciate if you click that like button, ring the bell. That helps me out quite a bit, and that would be awesome of you. Let's take a look what we got here. So this is my free-to-play account. Like I said, there is premium money stuff on here that I have earned through events in game. And the event last year where you were able to get Lobi crystals. Actually, you'll notice I do have a few Lobi items on here. This tune is about 8 months old now. It's a alien tactical Romulan that is Fed aligned. There's a lot of advantages to that. In the beginner's guide, I go over the SROs and the massive advantage to being able to stack your ship out with those. So it looks like somebody's pinging me here. Can't tell where it came from. It was too fast. All right, so let's jump into it here. So we'll just go through the gear and all the different items, and then we'll talk about why we're using what. It's pretty straightforward. This is following the basic methodology for builds. We're using all the same energy type. So I'm using the Zotvosh Disruptor beams. I got some of these from, I think somebody gave me them in my fleet, actually. They're a little bit different. The proc on them, I'm kind of unsure about. From what I understand, they may not actually be working correctly with the beam overload. So just know when you're looking at most of the builds I do, and especially in the advanced level, the kind of particular weapon you're using, so be it this disruptor or another disruptor, it's not going to make a huge difference. If you were to switch these all out with just crafted ones, that's not going to change the results on this ship in any kind of real way. When you get to the elite level, you're going to find that makes a little more of a difference. Say, on the elite level, everything's crazy maxed in gold. If I had spiral wave disruptors, the proc that comes on that, and at that min-max level, that's going to make a little bit of difference. At the advanced level, that's not as big of a difference. So whatever you have access to or whatever you like, I encourage you to go, with that. So those are the 5 basically filler disruptor beams that I'm using here. It's what I had, so it's what I built with. The first item of note is going to be the Terran Task Force Disruptor Beam. This is a rep item. Comes from the Terran Task Force rep, and it is excellent. The damage output on this scales with the reduction of the enemy's hull. This and the phaser variant are probably, some of the best beams you can get in the game. It's definitely a best in slot for any disruptor or phaser beam build. There's also a cannon variation of it, and if this was a cannon build, which obviously it's nothing close to that, it would have the variant on it. So the Terran Task Force, if you're ever running phaser or disruptor, in your beam or cannon, which I guess are basically the only ones for energy, you're going to want one of those flavors for your build. Next item is also a rep. This is the Dark Matter Quantum Torpedo. This is from the Disco rep. I am using this in conjunction with the set, or the 2-piece set. I'll go over that once I get down to the console here. So this has an excellent proc on it. As I've said in other videos, even without the set bonus, if I didn't have that other piece, I would still be running this torpedo. It's excellent. It basically puts a dot on the enemy and does physical damage over time. Next up is the Colony Deflector. This comes in a couple different flavors for the different modifiers on it. They all are going to have the plus 15% critical severity and plus 4% critical chance. That's the main reason that it's on here. This particular one, I believe it's stock, because this is this is a stock item. It's just upgraded, but the rarity is stock. This particular one has the Starship weapon stabilization, which basically increases your crit chance a little bit, and it also has shield penetration on it there at the bottom. The other two aren't really a big deal for me. Again, if we were talking on the elite level, min-maxing, depending on the other traits and procs and things that I have, I would pay a little more attention to that. But you can get this at your fleet colony. I believe they have to be tier 3 or 4. Don't quote me on that. I'll have to check, but this will come from your fleet colony. If your fleet doesn't have this, you could ask in general chat if somebody could give you an invite to their fleet colony, and you could go purchase it at theirs, provided your fleet has provisions for it. Next item is going to be the competitive engine. I've discussed this in the past as well. This is my go-to. It's most people's at pretty much any level once it becomes available. This is from the competitive reputation, and I am using the tactical version of this. There's a science and an engineering version, and what this does is every time I activate a firing mode, it's going to give me a speed boost, turn boost, defense rating, and it's going to give me a plus 10% increase to recharge speed on tactical bridge officer abilities for 10 seconds. So if you're running more than one firing mode, this is going off every 5 to 10 seconds, 5 to 15, depending on what your cooldowns are like. So you're getting that little bit of speed boost, helps you maneuver a little bit, and it cools down those tactical bridge officer abilities quite a bit, and really adds up. Next is the Warp Core, and this is craftable. They also go in loot drops. In fact, my main on this account, I'm working on some videos using him, and I have him using this same core. It's a Mark 12 blue, and it's just as good, because the reason I have it on here is for the negative 15% weapons power cost, and also the resistance rating to your subsystem drain, which is a nice little extra there. There are modifiers like amp that I believe you can get on here, and depending on how you're using your power settings and the rest of the build, there's other items that can be useful. So on this particular one, I have engine power to weapons, so I'm getting a plus 7.5% of my engine's power put into my weapons, which is always nice to have extra in that pool for the beam overload and the kind of drain that it does. Next, we're going to have the Tilly shield. This is an excellent shield. The two-piece for it's very good as well, although I don't have it on here with the core. Core gives you, with having the shield, the two-piece gives you quite a bit of extra regen. I don't really feel like I need it on this build, and I'm getting more out of this core, so that's why I'm not using the two-piece. Not to mention, I don't have the resources yet to get the core on this particular tune. But this shield is excellent. I'm basically using it on any kind of directed energy builds because of the extra proc that it gives, or it's not even a proc, it's a guarantee. Your weapons attacks cause enemy shields to receive 11.5% increased damage for 10 seconds. And that's based on your shield power. Mine's pretty low. That's why that number looks the way that it does, but that's still plenty, and I'm not complaining about that extra, on top of it being a decent shield to keep you alive, as far as shields do that. As we discussed in the back, I'm using all beam arrays. Wouldn't hurt really to have an Omni here, just so as I'm maneuvering, because I do need to kind of dip my nose in every now and then to get the torpedo to go off. But I don't have one yet. At some point, I'll switch out for basically just a crafted Omni in the back to give me a little more coverage. The Omnis do, when you max them all the way out, they do a little bit less damage because one of the modifiers is taken up to give it that full range of attack, 360 degrees. But in a lot of cases, depending on your piloting, it's still going to perform as well, if not better, than your back weapons, because it's able to continually hit targets regardless of which way you're facing. So do bear that in mind when you're looking at, stats on things and the DPS and the damage output. Your DPS, the DPS on something is really based on how often is it firing. I mean, this could be, I could have this weapon in the back, and if I'm looking at both of these, I'm saying this weapon's the best, but because it's in the back, it may not be shooting as much as the one in the front. So the run in the front is going to end up serving me better. So just consider that when you're looking at weapons and the way that you're laying your ship out. For devices, we have the Kobayashi Maru. This was from an event, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 months ago or so. You click this and it warps in the Kobayashi Maru and starts throwing out random little buffs to yourself and your teammates that last for, it looks like 45 seconds, 30 seconds is how long they last for. It'll remain for 45 seconds and be pumping those buffs out. Not a game changer having this, it's just a nice little extra to have pop at the beginning, and then as soon as it comes up again, to keep those little extra bits coming in. I'm assuming, I don't think this is in the MUDs market. This probably will pop up again when the event comes around again this year. So if you don't have it, you should have an opportunity to get it then. Next, we're using energy amplifiers. This is giving us the extra 20% bonus energy damage for 22 seconds, and this does have a minute cooldown on it. Surplus, Duranium surplus. I went over this in the movement video that I put together for getting around the map quickly. This essentially is acting as another evasive maneuvers, or a slightly weaker version of that, to get around the map. And then we are using the Subspace field modulator. You'll have to look this one up. I'll put a link down in the description for the mission it comes from, but it's one of the ones with the meridians, and I think it might even have been pulled, but it's still available through your available tab once you meet a certain mission requirement that you've completed. If you have a level 65 character and you've played all the way through, then this is going to be in your availability tag in order to play the mission to get that piece. And what it does is, essentially, I have it on here for the plus 34 all damage resistance for 15 seconds, and that just gives me a little extra survivability if I'm starting to get pounded. This ship I have, this is actually a tier 5 that I did a U upgrade and then the X upgrade. So in the X slot, I have the Lorca's custom fire control, and this is on here for the crit chance, almost 4%, the extra weapons power, and the extra shield penetration. This should basically be on every single ship that you own that's not science, and maybe tanking depending on how you built it out. Everything else, this console is excellent. The 2-piece for this and for the torpedo up front is going to give us some stacking critical severity. So every time you have a crit hit outgoing for 20 seconds, you're going to get an additional plus 1%, stacks up to 25. So extra 25% after you have 25 critical hits. Very nice little boost there. So both of these items are excellent by themselves, and you put them together and you just get a whole, I mean, it's just a sweet deal. So here's the Lobi items, and I also went over this in one of the videos from the week before last. My picks for Lobi items. Again, these items are going to be on basically every ship. You might vary some of them, using 1 or 2 on even science, depending on how you're building. Torpedo boats, I'm even using them on some of my tanks. These things are really all-purpose. They're not tied to a specific energy type or kind of build. They're excellent. So the first one is the tachyokinetic converter, and this is on here for the critical chance and severity for this build. It also gives me some extra turn rate, which is great on a boat like this. It also gives control expertise, which doesn't matter on this build, but could certainly be helpful on other kinds of builds, along with the stats that I just stated. Bioneural infused circuitry, and this is on there for the massive 26.2% critical severity. It's huge. It gives you extra hull cap, and again, it also gives you control. Next, we have the swarm processor, and this is here for, again, the massive critical chance at 3.9%, and then it also gives you some accuracy rating, which again on this ship, maybe not as big of a deal, probably more helpful in PvP, although there's probably better people to ask about that than me. What is this here? This is a Bellum RCS accelerator. I put this on here for the extra turn rate, and it gives an extra 1.4 critical chance. This is mainly here, this is here because I decided for the video and for the runs that I did that I was not going to use this guy here, which is the dynamic power redistributor. As of right now, in order to get this, you're paying almost the price of a ship on the exchange for a Romulan or for a Klingon. Those could vary, so I would look, but the reason they've gotten so expensive is because they are not available anymore, because they used to be available for cross-faction equipment packs, which are now null and void because any faction can fly any ship. Which, for anybody that's Romulan or Klingon, this really hurt them not being able to get this at the 10 mil that it was going for, instead of the 180 something mil it's going for now. I already had one of these because, like I said, they were fairly inexpensive, and I had ground one out before that change happened. But for the sake of the video, I didn't want to put this on here just because at this point, if you are just getting into the advanced level, this is not going to be available to you yet unless you're opening boxes or buy it off the exchange. If you do have it, use it in place of that RCS accelerator that I have. If you don't, the RCS accelerator is good, and there are other options as well that you could fit in there instead. So this came from actually a rep box drop, and let me see if I have any. I don't think I do. It came from the Disco rep, and basically every time you do a daily rep, you're going to get one of these boxes, right? So this is from the Gamma rep, and it just dropped this. So when I opened one of these boxes, it came out, and I decided to go ahead and use it. Now you can actually purchase that item through the rep. So if you go to the rep store, and we look at... There we go. And this one gives hull capacity, and this one gives us the critical chance. So you can purchase that with dilithium through this store here, or you could just continue running these daily missions. I just completed this out, so I don't have them, but they're going to look kind of like this here, except you'll get a little bit more points. And so if you were to run one of these, let's just do that. then it would drop a box into your inventory. So as you're leveling up, just kind of be checking this to see if anything comes out of it that's halfway decent like that, where you could fill in a gap. So this one gives us critical chance. This is a science console. It's gonna, or no, this is engineering. So this gives us hull regen, and so the passive hull regen in and out of combat hull regen. So anyways, I'm going to throw both of those away, but I happen just to keep this one, and it actually kind of made sense for this ship. So that's why this is here, mainly for the critical chance. It fills the slot, and the extra turn rate benefits this larger ship quite a bit. Next we have the assimilated module. This one's excellent. This comes from the Omega rep. I believe it comes from the second tier of it, which if you are at the advanced level, you are far past this and can get it. If you don't have it, go ahead and get it. It's here for the critical chance and critical severity, as well as the weapon's power settings. It does give you control, and it does give you drain as well, which again, those two items, not real big deal on this build, but could be helpful on others. Next we have the temporal disentanglement suite. This is here for the critical chance and the critical severity. Those two items scale off of your auxiliary levels, power levels, which I have really low. So you could kind of argue whether or not that's worth it or not on my particular build because of the way I have my power settings, but it does give me a little bit, and it also gives me a little bit more into that auxiliary, so it kind of helps itself. It was enough to where I decided to go ahead and keep it in there. You could slot something else there if you wanted to, and I don't think you would be missing out on a whole bunch, but for me, I was really focusing on, because it's that Romulan character with the SROs, really kind of maxing to see what I could get out of critical chance and severity. Which we'll look at here in just a moment. This is a mission drop. This comes from the mission Butterfly, if I remember correctly, from the Iconian arc. Okay, last for the science consoles, we have the 0 Point Emergency Conduit, and this comes from the Romulan rep. And this comes fairly early on as well. I think it comes at the second level, just like the Omega console that I have here. This is here for the critical chance and for the all power, or 2.4 power to all subsystems. And this one also gives us drain, which again, I don't care about. So I think you're probably seeing a theme through all of this, right? So, I mean, I really, with what I have on the ship, I could change out my weapons to any energy type and change out my tactical consoles to any energy type, and this thing's off to the races. All of the stuff here is not tied to any kind of specific damage output or anything like that. So, you know, especially when you have, you know, a Romulan, you know, character or someone that comes from that faction, and being able to really boost some of those stats along with the rest of these items, you're really able to pump up, you know, that overall damage output for any kind of build. And so I get a lot of questions. Will you go through some of the other, you know, consoles and stuff in the Discord and on some of the video comments? And I'm more than fine doing that for you guys. I just need a little more direction. Like, hey, I'm putting together this kind of build. What are some good consoles? I don't have Lobi stuff yet. Okay, I can do that. But I mean, there's hundreds of consoles in the game. So, I mean, I can't really just kind of, you know, most of them I wouldn't use. There are some that I would use for very specific reasons. There's some I would use on the budget level for specific build energy types. But if you have questions on, you know, filling in some of those gaps or some of the other things, you give me a little more direction on that, because these are the good consoles. In place of those, I could probably look at, okay, what was I using before? We could do that. That starts to get back down into, you know, the more of the beginner's guide. And maybe we'll go ahead and take a look at that, start looking at some ship builds in the beginner's guide series, so that we can kind of get that stepping stone. In fact, I'll work on that next. For tactical consoles, I'm using all locators. Sorry, it's late. I can still hear my kids up, so I'm getting worried they're going to come out. All locators. This last one, I don't have quite enough for the other console. I'm going to do a exploiter here, just to get the critical chance up a little bit, because I think I have, critical severity up, because I have plenty of critical chance already. These consoles are going to come from your fleet spire. They are 50,000 fleet credits. They're a little pricey on that end. The dilithium's not bad. You know, if you're playing casually, you could probably grind one of these out every couple days, depending on how active your fleet is with their projects. If they're not active at all with their projects and you're newer, I would find another fleet that is. Otherwise, you're going to be lacking on some of the things that, you know, you're going to want to get that come from your fleet stores. Okay, so that's all the consoles. Let's take a look at the stats, how we're sitting here. So power transfer rate, hull ratings, not terrible at all. Hull regen, not great. This is more of falls into that middle category when it comes to survival that we discussed last week in the video, where this is it's kind of in a bad place because I really need to focus on my reps more. I have a couple things that'll help me drop threat, but I'm missing quite a bit that I need. I have a little bit of heals on it. I'm really relying on hoping this little bit of heals gets it done and being able to destroy the stuff as quickly as possible. There are some traits that are helping me as well, which we'll take a look at that in terms of threat. Shields, again, for me personally, are kind of whatever. Resistance rating is sitting at pretty comfortable 30+%, depending on the category we're looking at, which is really where I'm getting most of my survivability from. If this was down in the 20s, that's what makes you a glass cannon, okay? It's your resistance rating. Your hull helps, but this is, you know, your health pool, and your resistance is going to determine how fast this pool drops as you're taking hits. If you're down in the 10, you know, low 20s and you start taking a pounding, this number's going to disappear. It doesn't matter how high it is. So let's take a look at this critical chance and severity. This is huge. 56% critical chance and what are we at? 206.3 critical severity. That's pretty damn good. With the locator, that'll jump me up, another 9. So I'll be at about 215. And this ship doesn't have anything crit chance or severity wise in the mastery whatsoever. It's all mostly survivability stuff that's in there. So I'm pretty proud of that, and that's pretty impressive, I think, for a newer tune, free to play. But it really comes down to, you know, these Lobi consoles and a couple of the personal space traits, which we'll also take a look at. And this is unbuffed, so you know, let's take a look at this. What can I click here to give us some? I mean, let's just click attack pattern alpha. So you're in the middle, you're going up to the boss, and we're not even clicking any of these other things, but, you know, we just click this. I mean, that jumps us up pretty big. And if some of our other traits were stacking on top of that, this can be quite a bit higher than that. So this is huge. If you're bumping that while beam overload's going, you're just going to be doing tremendous amounts of damage while that's running. And even with those base stats, I mean, it's going to do pretty well. So flight speed, we're at 44, so it's not slow by any means. And let's see what that turn rate looks like. Turn rate is not great, but it's not terrible either. For a big ship like that, 18 degrees a second, that's not too bad. So definitely can't complain about that. Take a look at our skills. This is it varies from Augie's catch-all. So I went heavy tactical all the way. The only thing I skipped is the defense. Again, defense is not a big deal unless you're PvPing. I put quite a bit into hull. That was really to help proc Tyler's duality, which we'll touch on in a minute. I like to move and go fast, so we're full on the impulse expertise. Power transfer rate, to be completely honest, I don't know if I didn't have these, would I notice a difference? To be honest with you, I'm really not sure. I like to have a little bit in my resistance, especially for the kinetic side of things. So that's why we have this set up there. And then we have the long range targeting. Again, all of tactical is full. So we get that focus fury and all 3 of these stats you get out of that. And then I focused on getting power into the systems that I want. So, you know, engines, weapons, and then just give it a little bit extra for the shields and auxiliary. And same thing we have up top here, so it's giving us +3 to all our subsystem power settings. Running Intel and Strategist on this, which is pretty standard there. Let's take a look at the traits. So on the traits, I have some that are pretty good, some that are okay. Adaptive defense, this is just giving me some extra damage resistance, which is good. Adaptive offense, when I bought this, it was like $1 million when it first came out, and this stacks up critical chance, which is excellent. We have our beam training, another excellent one. This is stock, everybody has. Good day to die. This can get pricey. This took me quite a while to save up running Tour of the Galaxies, but if you're looking for this, you can sometimes find a deal, but this is going to vary in price. It's going to run you 10 to 15 mil. These are stock ones here. So Fleet Coordinator, it's plus 2% bonus damage for yourself and all your teammates, maximum of 10%. We have Innocuous. This is reducing some of that threat. So this is where some of our survivability comes in and gives us some more critical severity. This trait right here is outrageous, but it will come down in price here pretty soon. This pairs with this build very well. On critical hits, I'm getting 2% of all my captain's abilities restored, which means every time I get a critical hit, which is very often, it's more than 50% of the time, unbuffed, that means a ability like this that has a 2-minute cooldown charge is cooling down much, much faster. It's pretty expensive right now, and that's because it's only in the latest lockbox. This will be added to the Infinity Choice Pack here pretty soon, and you will be able to get it much, much cheaper. So be looking for that. I was able to get this, again, also very inexpensive as well. Next, we have Operative. This is also a stock trait for tactical officers, plus 1 critical chance, plus 2% critical severity. Then we have Terran Targeting Systems. This is a very good trait. Again, this is going to come off the exchange. It's going to vary in price, but you're looking in between the 10 and 20 mil for this, unless you do buy some boxes and get some of the personal space trait, personal or choice packs. So these can be fairly inexpensive sometimes if somebody dumps a whole bunch because they are in that choice pack. And this trait gives you plus 15% critical severity, which is excellent. It's a very good boost for just taking up one slot like this. Lastly, I got this one. I don't know if somebody posted it wrong, but I got it pretty inexpensive as well. I think it was like 6 million. Again, this was going to run in between 10 and 15, depending on where the market is. And, you know, if you're watching this 2 years from now, it could be a lot more expensive, could be a lot less. That's true with all of these. And this is whenever a teammate kills something, you will get plus 5% all damage for 10 seconds and plus 5 accuracy for 10 seconds as well. These effects stack up to 3 times. So nice little extra Cat 1 boost there. All right, Starship traits. So I have 2 of the 4 that I went over in that last video on this account. The next one I'm going to get is the supercharged weapons, which comes off the Tactical Star Cruiser, basically the Tier 6 C-Store variant of this ship. That's going to be my next one. So I have the trait from the Arbiter. This is the emergency weapon cycle, and this is giving us the power, cost reduction for our weapons, and increased firing cycle haste by 20%. Excellent trait. Everybody needs to have this. This is your go-to number 1, will be on every single one of your energy weapon builds. Next, we have Strike from Shadows, and this is giving us a huge threat reduction. So again, this is partially why, without having very many heals and not a lot of threat dropping clickies that would come from the rep activatables, this is helping me out quite a bit with that 60% threat reduction. This is also giving us a additional 5% critical chance and plus 5% bonus all damage when we damage a enemy that does not have us targeted. Excellent trait. This next trait is one of the ones that I said I was going to give an honorable mention to 2 of them, and this is one of them. This trait is for beam overload builds. This is going to extend the duration of beam overload for 5 seconds. So if you look at my cooldown video, you'll see that the maximum cooldown you can do of any ability is 50%. So beam overload has a 30% or 30-second stock cooldown time. And if you're using, Photonic Officer 2 or 3 and maybe have improved Photonic Officer trait, you're going to be able to get that to cool down in 15 seconds. That is the hard stop. You cannot make the ability cool down any faster. The ability only runs for 10 seconds, and so you have that 5-second gap. This trait fills in that 5 seconds, so it doesn't cool it down faster, it extends the ability out longer, giving you basically a 100% uptime. I'm running Photonic Officer 1, so I'm probably getting about a second of downtime every 14 seconds or so, and there's probably a little bit more of a gap every couple cycles because of the way that Photonic Officer works. But in any case, with this trait, I'm essentially being able to keep beam overload up almost 100% of the time. So this is huge. This is really what makes this build, really, really shine. Without it, it would still do okay. With it, it just makes a huge, huge difference. Next item that I have on here, this is going to come from completing one of your specializations. This comes from Strategist, and this turns your Brace for Impact into a clicky that is going to give you a 20% bonus all damage for 15 seconds. Bonus damage, again, that's Cat 2, and that is a huge, huge boost. And this ability also has this actually has a 1-minute cooldown, and with this trait here, Intelligence Attaché, every time we're getting that critical hit, we're knocking 2% off of that. So that ability can come up fairly often, and it's a very nice one to have. It's free as well because you can unlock it through that. This trait is more of a filler. I didn't really have anything else. I run my shields real low anyways, so it kind of goes together okay. But I get plus 0 to 15% bonus all damage. This is going to scale with your shield. So as you take damage to your shield, you're going to get that scaling bonus. And then it restores 25% of your shields once per every 5 seconds. That's when you defeat a foe, it'll restore more shields, and then the enemy. I'd almost wish it didn't have that, at least for my build. For a tank, it might make sense or something like that, but if the shields stay pretty low, then I'm getting that extra bonus damage out of it and more of it. So that's what we're looking at there. That covers the starship traits. Next, we are doing pretty much the standard stuff. I just unlocked this one, getting to the tier 6 in the rep for the disco. I'm sorry, this is not disco, this is gamma. And this came not out of the tier 6, and this came out of the tier 4. So I completed the tier 4, and that's where it unlocked that. And that is giving us an additional 5% bonus weapons damage. So this is only good for weapons. So science abilities and stuff, this would not work. Tyler's Duality, this is giving us critical chance based on the number of hit points we have, our whole capacity. Excellent space rep trait there. And then we have the other two, which are pretty much on all my builds, even science for the most part. This is giving, I believe this comes from the Dyson Sphere, excuse me. And this is a plus 16% critical severity. And then from the Romulan rep, we're getting plus 4% critical chance. So this is giving us all of these, except for this one is also stacking up critical chance, critical severity. For my active reputation, all I have is this, and this tends to make a mess of the map. It's good for tanks. I feel like it grabs aggro pretty well, but it does kinetic damage. Basically, this thing's swinging around behind your ship. I'm not using it, so that's that. Stations, pretty self-explanatory. We're using Chemosite. This comes from a choice pack as well. You can buy it off the exchange. A lot of this is going to be filler. I mean, I'm finding on a lot of ships that it depends on the ship. If I'm doing like a quasi, science torp mine build, then I need a lot more space. But if I'm doing beam overload or cannon scatter volley, I don't really need that many. I mean, if I just had one commander, it'd be fine. So some of this stuff, I'm just kind of filling in. Like I don't even use the tactical team. I have it slotted. Where is it? I don't even think I slotted it. Yeah, I did. I slotted it here, but I didn't click it at all because it can interfere with it can give you misfires essentially with your beam overload or cause that firing cycle to restart. So I don't even use it. It's there because something's got to be slotted there. Using tac pattern beta. This is for the debuff, beam overload 3, obviously, because it's beam overload build. We have hazard emitters, and that's there to proc the extra crit chance. From Strategist. So when that gets activated, it bumps up your crit chance by, I believe it's 3%. 3%. So nice little bump there, and it's healing you just passively, and this is a heal over time, so that's kind of nice. And then we're running the torp spread since we have the torpedo in the front. Next, we have emergency power to engines, and again, if we refer back to the movement video, this is proccing the duty officer that I have from the Phoenix box, so that it recharges evasive maneuvers right away. So evasive maneuvers runs for like 9 seconds, it stops, and then you have like 40 seconds, or is it a minute? It's captain's ability, so it should be a minute. 43 seconds is what it came out to. If I click this now, that's going to drop down to 4, 3, 2, and 1, and that's up and ready to go again. This comes from Let It Go from the Winter Store. So if you've participated in the winter event, this store is unlocked, and you can purchase this with the ornaments and all the different stuff that you collect there. It's got a nice little debuff that sits on and stacks up over time. Good to use on bosses. Next we have emergency power to weapons, and this is giving us a nice huge boost at 16.6% bonus energy weapons damage, which is huge, and it also gives us a huge plus 40% power weapon settings for 30 seconds, which is excellent because the ability runs for 30 seconds. So that's basically giving it to you all the time. And then the heal that I have on the ship is emergency power to structural integrity. Next, we have Very Cold in Space. This also comes from the Winter Event store. Can be purchased with the same little items. I like to stack these up, so when I go hit an attack cube or a boss or something like that, I'll hit them with Let It Go. That starts to build up this damage over time, and it also gives them cold damage over time, and then I'll hit them with this here. And this is going to do an area of effect, cold damage over time. It has some control effects on them as well. Excuse me, again, somewhat filler stuff, but nice little filler stuff that's cheap and easy to get as long as you have that store unlocked. Lastly, on the traits, we have Photonic Officer, and this is doing our cooldowns for us. So after we fire off all these abilities, we get Photonic Officer goes last, and what it does is it increases the amount of your cooldown by 2 seconds every second for 20 seconds. So you'll see this kind of skips ahead a little bit here and there. So that's our bridge officer abilities. Pretty straightforward. Lastly, let's take a look at our duty officers. So, I mean, this is just, I didn't have really a lot to use in here, so I just used whatever I had that kind of made sense. The first one we have in here is going to give us a chance to reduce the time for recharge when using beam special ability attacks, which would be beam overload. So that's going to give us a 50% chance to reduce the remaining recharge time by 5 seconds. So that's nice little keeping, some of this stuff might get wasted because of that hard 15 or 50% cooldown. You can't go any faster than the 50%. But this ability does a cooldown that lasts for 20 seconds, but it has a 30-second recharge. So there's a 10-second spot where this is not cooling anything down. So these abilities can help kind of fill in those gaps a little bit. And other times, they won't be doing anything even if they proc, because you will be at that maximum of that 50% cooldown. Still nice to have on there, though, just to make sure. And I am using 2 of those. Third is going to be the Photonic. He's a Photonic Officer, and he comes from the Phoenix packs. And let me stretch this out so we can see it a little bit better. So he's the Emergency Con hologram, specializations Photonic, and what he does is allows the evasive maneuver to be cooled down by emergency power to engines. Must have, I get him right away. Just makes a huge difference, especially when you're playing through missions, trying to get around the map. It gives you quite a bit of extra ability to do that. Okay, next we have, he does, looks like multiple things maybe. The first shot with beam overload has a 30% chance to increase target bleed through by 30% for 4 seconds, maximum once every 15 seconds. So when we're hitting targets, that first shot potentially could basically penetrate through the shields by an additional 30% more than what it would normally do. That's really cool. I forgot that was even on here. that pairs up very, very nicely. All of these items except for this guy here, which comes from the Phoenix packs, are all available off the exchange or the duty officer packs. And lastly, we have chance to reduce recharge time for emergency power to subsystem abilities. So I should probably have, so I click this here, 45 seconds, and then I'm going to click this other one here. And he didn't proc. A lot of times what'll happen is people will stack up 3 of these and use that, and they'll run, say, emergency power to weapons and then emergency power to structural integrity, because they don't have a shared cooldown. And so what they'll do in some instances is proc the other one or the same one, depending on the order you get, to cool down faster. Again, this is kind of filler. I didn't really have anything else that made sense to put here. I mean, there are a lot of things that make sense. I just don't have them. So I put this in. And again, this is another just help kind of fill in the gaps when Photonic Officer is on cooldown. If this is proccing, that's just helping the emergency power to weapons recharge faster. That's our duty officers. Let's take a quick look at the endeavors. I'm not super high on this account, at 157. Obviously, I've focused on a lot of the space stuff, a little bit on the ground. I mean, obviously, you only get to pick from 3 of them, so you're kind of limited. But, obviously, I'm sure most of your guys' probably looks the way that you're kind of pushing for it. Eventually comes up and you'll focus on those things. So this Endeavor system's nice. They added it a little over a year ago, I want to say, about a year ago. And that's given a nice opportunity for people to get a little bit extra out, and people that maybe didn't want to spend as much money or just play a little more casually but are able to start building this up, be able to get them a little bit of a boost, especially account-wide. It's very nice when you've rolled a new character and you have some of these up. As soon as they hit the proper level, these boosts will become available to them. So let's go ahead and take a look at the build and combat. We'll run it through an ISA, and then we'll take a quick peek at the parse on it. So on my end here, I did 143.78 on the parse there, which I think is pretty respectable. Looks good. I'm very happy with that. Let's take a look at our chart here. So good opening boost, and then we were able to maintain a nice solid damage output through it, with it slowly kind of ramping back up at the very end a bit. So that's a nice line to be able to see. You're always going to get that initial boost, because especially using the spam bar, everything you're clicking at the beginning, you're getting like all the boost you have are all getting boosted that one time. And rarely any time else in the run are you going to be able to get everything boosted at once, because things are on cooldown and those kinds of things. So it's just a little over 2 minutes, 15 seconds. I took quite a bit of damage, a little bit less than the other guy did. I think mine was a little more over time. He was probably getting focused. That's why he died there. Let's take a look at the individual log here. If you're interested in this software, I do have a video on how to download and install it. It's very, very good for being able to check your progress and changes you make to your ship and how that's working out for you. So we did 143k DPS. We had total damage. Is this damage in? 19 million. So that's not bad. We had a one-hit max of 213, target debuff at 106, which is pretty good. I have a hard time getting good debuffs on any of my builds, on any of my accounts. I think that's something I can probably really work on. Attacks, that's pretty high, 1,400 total attacks through that run. Our hit rate was 100%. Critical chance rate was almost 70%, which is to be expected with, the kind of stats that we have sitting still there. See, and that's where this matters, right? Because that means for almost 70% of the time, every time I fired my weapon, we're getting a critical hit, which is taking all of the damage that our weapons normally do, and it's giving us an over 200% boost to that damage. That's why, when we look at these builds and you get into the advanced level, you want to stay away from those little onesie and twosie, set bonuses that are giving you an extra 20 or an extra 30%, because if you can fill those two slots with something that's giving you critical chance and some severity, that's going to go way farther than adding a Cat 1 bonus, even if it's 30%. So that's why, we kind of build around, the way that I am on this. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Let's just finish going through this. We had 17 kills total and a hit by rate of 91%. Jesus. Okay. So I was hit by 91% of the things on the map. And I did not die. Our, disruptor arrays, these are our 5 that I have on there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. 5 on there. They did 74k damage. Terran Task Force by itself did 20k. So, that's very, very good. Dark Matter Torpedo did 10k, very good. We'll look at pets in a minute. Beam Array Not Under, Beam Overload did 8. Chemosite Weapon did 7, which isn't bad for that. Dark Matter, this is from the proc, the damage overtime or it's not a proc, but the damage overtime that the Dark Matter Torpedo does, and so on. So the Let It Go, it doesn't do very much damage, but it does an excellent debuff, and that's probably where this debuff rating for me being good. I know there's others that do much, much higher, but for me, that's actually pretty good. And most of that probably came from Let It Go. I was able to get it onto the larger targets that stayed alive for a while to get the full potential out of it. Let's take a look at pets. So we had the Nimbus Distress Call. I didn't talk about that. These are from one of the Nimbus missions. If you're level 65, if you haven't done this, if you're a Romulan, it's going to be in your story arc. So there's a mission, I think it's the last mission in that arc, and you can get this. You can slot it in your tray from your inventory. That's why I missed it, because it's not actually slotted on my ship, but you can still put it in your inventory. And what it does is it warps in a couple ships that heal you and help fighting the enemy with you. Which is really nice. And they do a decent amount of damage there. And then we have the Cryonic Turbulence. This is from the Very Cold in Space. Yes, Very Cold in Space. This is that 1-2 that I kind of mixed together, and it did okay. Again, more filler stuff, but not bad. And this little drone here, he sucks. He just gets in the way, and he does next to nothing. This is from the Swarm processor. So there's a little pet that flies around, and I think all he does is do damage, but you can see what he does here. So he mostly just gets in the way when you're manually targeting things. All right, so that's the parse. I'm really happy with that. I think that looks really good. I actually had ran one right before I made the video that I was going to use, but I figured why not just do another one, and I'll just show you that as well, just so you can get some comparison. So the last run that I did in this same ship, I did 127 with the exact same gear on it there. So again, you know, pretty solid. This ship should perform even in a bad run at over 100K, and in a great run, you should be able to get up to 180 is my guess. I think my highest is 100 in mid-60s. And there's a lot of room for improvement on that. And I guess that makes sense because it is in that, that mid-tier of advanced level gameplay and game building. So lastly, let's just take another just quick peek at the ship, and that will wrap it up for us. So again, I just want to emphasize all of this is really a culmination of the beginner's guide videos that I've made, the basic ship building, the movement, the survivability, you know, the basic methodology of putting things together, not chasing, you know, the white rabbit down the hole, trying to get the set bonuses and all this kind of stuff, where it can end up hurting you because you could be putting other things that are better individually there. And again, I want to point out on this build, like I said, I can literally change out the weapon energy type here, these 7 weapons, and these 4 consoles with any other energy type, and it's going to perform just like this. None of this stuff is tied to the specific energy type that I'm using. And that's why I like this platform so much, is because it's universal. So you could go with Spiral Wave Disruptor, you know, you would only have to change this. You could go Phaser, you could go literally anything else, Tetrion, whatever. All you have to change out is just your tactical consoles. And you'll find that some weapons and the procs and stuff, maybe you'll tweak a little something in here, you know, to fit your style and what you're doing with those weapons, and maybe some of the other bridge officer abilities. But you know, if you get these Lobi consoles, the rest of the stuff you can earn in game. You can earn these in game 2 at the event coming up. You could earn these and the ship that I got the trait from for the beam overload with this event that's coming up. If you wait for the sale, that'll most likely happen thereafter, very closely thereafter. You could get the Zendi Primate ship, which is what the beam overload trait comes from, and you could get those 3 consoles and maybe have a couple Lobi left over to save for later. Rest of this comes from rep and from mission drops and just playing the game. And if you put together a platform like this will give you the ability to go through any kind of content, grind out resources and things like that to really start building up to the next level of play at that elite level. So I hope this was helpful, guys. Again, if you have questions, comments, go ahead and throw them down in the comment section there. I always appreciate that. Join the Discord. Link will be down in the description. I do have a suggestion channel in that. So if you have suggestions or things you would like me to address, make videos on, try and be very specific. Again, you know, I have people and I'm trying to find out from them what they want, but you know, hey, will you go over the consoles, which ones are good or bad? Well, for what? You know, I mean, there's so much in this game. I cannot make a video on the consoles because we'll be watching it for like a week straight. So, definitely leave me some feedback in that regards. Just kind of be specific of what you're looking for. If you're not sure, say, hey, I'm not sure. This is kind of what I'm thinking. And, you know, myself and the community, if you put it in one of the other open chats, we can talk about that and help maybe dial it in and maybe help answer some of your questions about that right then. So again, thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and hit that button and ring the bell. I really appreciate it. And until next time, stay safe and thank you for watching.